California native plants, and we're so excited to have you all here with us again tonight. We have a really great show planned for you today. So my name is Erin Johnson, and I'm the Outreach Manager at the Theodore Paine Foundation for Wildflowers and Native Plants. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Brenda Kyle, who is our Community Engagement Coordinator. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, everyone.
As well as Scott Scher, who is our Adult Education Manager, who moonlights as our Zoom director for this show. We also have our Executive Director, who's going to be popping in on chat, so you can say hi to him over there, Evan. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Erin. Hey, everybody. I'll be manning the chat here, so ask your questions, and we have an amazing guest tonight as well.
We do. We do. So before we get into it, I just wanted to say that we're very, very grateful to an anonymous donor for making season 2 possible, especially right now during this time with COVID-19 cases rising. It just means so much to us to be able to connect with you all in a very safe way virtually over the internet. So for anyone who is joining for the first time today, the way this works is that Brenda and I are going to be chatting with our guests for the first hour of the show. And then at 6:30, we are going to invite all of you onto the screen in gallery view. And so we can be in conversation together. So that'll happen at 6:30. And today we are very, very honored to be joined by Chumash elder and storyteller Alan Salazar. And today, to set the stage for him, we're actually going to open with a couple plants that are very important to the Chumash. And so for this, we are going to go to the sales yard at TPF, actually the Education Center, with Flora. Welcome, Flora.
Hi, Erin and everyone out there. Thank you all for having me. I'm just going to introduce a couple of plants that will be spoken by Alan in his storytelling segment. And one of them is the Baccharis. What I have here in my hand here is the Baccharis pilularis pigeon point, which is a ground cover or low growing Baccharis. And then I also have the Baccharis pilularis consanguinea, which is a shrub form. So I just wanted to introduce 2 forms of the coyote bush that we have here in the sales yard. And probably one of our highlights on the grounds when you enter the sales yard is the pigeon point at the base. It's an evergreen plant that does wonderfully in full sun. And then if you would want a taller form, the consanguinea also does that. The other reason why I brought these 2 together and just doing my quick research for this evening is the flower forms of the plant. And I understand that if you can see this one on the pigeon point, it actually has it's already been spent, but it has a yellow tone flower to it. And then if you look at this one on the consanguinea, it has a fluffier flower to it. So I understand that there's a male and female form of the Baccharis. And that's what we have here. And when you come to the sales yard, please let me show you where these guys are because they are so beautiful. And then I get the honor of speaking about this plant one more time again, the Corker Zagafolia, or the Coast Live Oak tree, and a beautiful, beautiful tree for California. Again, in our sales yard, there are 2 that anchor our sales yard, as well as there's a couple dotted in our demonstration garden. What I also understand that obviously the uses for the Chumash are high, and especially the use for the acorn. And so, I won't try to tell any story about it. I'll leave that for Alan. And then the one plant that I do not have in the sales yard right now would be the Sambucus nigra, or the elderberry. And just because of my lack of technology, I won't show it all to you, but if you could do a internet search. But Sambucus is the elderberry, it's a shrub form that has beautiful green leaves. It does go deciduous and does these flower forms or cluster of flowers, and does produce a edible or usable elderberry. And what I'm excited to learn about in this evening's talk is how the Chumash used it to actually make some instruments out of it. All good?
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Flora.
So So that was we're trying to get to Alan as soon as possible because he has a lot to say. Thank you for the plants, Flora. Alan, would you please start off? Well, number one, thank you for being here, but would you please start off with a land acknowledgement?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hamanak Netawan, Alan Salazar, Pasekva Nukasin. Hello, I'm Alan Salazar. I'm from the village of Pasekva. As my gracious host said, I am Chumash and Tataviam. My family traces to two villages that we know the most about, the village of Tuapu, which is Tapo Canyon and Simi Valley, and the village of Chogoyanga, which is in Santa Clarita. Actually, Magic Mountain is built over my Tatavion village of Chogoyanga. I want to start with a land acknowledgement, acknowledging that the Theodore Paine land is near the village of Waganga, place of thorns, which I believe is the Tongva village. But that area there in the foothills is an area that the two tribes, both the Tataviam and Tongva, came to and gathered and met, would do ceremony and have many gatherings to trade goods and things like that. So it's a very important area for both tribes. Land acknowledgements are something that have just kind of started to gain steam. But for tribal people, it's something that we have done for thousands of years. I tell people all the time, young people, old people, and everything in between, that most tribes in California, but definitely the Chumash, the Tongva Gabrielino, and the Tataviam were hunters, gatherers, and business people. And I say business people because we traded extensively. And whenever we came to another village to trade with them, to share our songs, to share our stories, we always acknowledged whose land we were on. I had the honor of going up to the Northwest last summer before all this craziness, and went to a large canoe gathering. And it was my first canoe gathering in the Puget Sound area that I'd been to. And I was invited by the Lumi tribe. And over 100 canoes came that day, and they traveled hundreds of miles. And they didn't all come at once. The first canoe was from Maui, a traditional wooden outrigger. And when they came up, they stopped at the beach, raised their paddles up, and stated who they were, where they were from, what tribe they were, what villages they were from. And they asked for permission to come ashore. And then the Lumi people greeted them, said, and welcomed them ashore. And every canoe did that 100 times. At the peak, there were 40, 50 canoes lined up there at the beach waiting for their turn to acknowledge the land, to acknowledge the people that they were coming to visit, that they traveled a long way, that they were tired, they were hungry. So land acknowledgements have gained popular in today's world. It's something tribal people have done for thousands and thousands of years. And it's just one of the examples of why this is probably about the 4th or 5th program I've done just in the last couple of days. In November, I'm always very busy. December, the phone doesn't ring. Well, except Santa comes down my chimney and leaves me gifts. I don't even know the dude, but he does. But November is a very important month for Native peoples. We've struggled to survive and to be acknowledged by non-natives, by the American government, is important to us. We don't ask for anything special. We just ask for a level playing field we just ask for the same respect that anyone would ask for. And Native American Month allows me to share my tribal beliefs, my tribal stories, and hopefully by the end of this program, so in about 4 hours when I stop speaking, I have 4 hours, right? I can cut it to 3.
You have all day.
Okay. I hope you have a little insight, and I look forward to the Q&A. It's always my favorite part. The lady that was talking, I missed what plant she was curious to find out about, because I was trying to get online. Yes, I do dye my hair this color so I can get the senior discount, but I am old. So what plant was she referring to?
In keeping with your story coming up, she did bring out some coyote brush and oak, and talked about elderberry a little bit.
Okay, and the last plant that you were asking about, young lady?
Was the Sambucus niger?
And the common name?
Elderberry.
Elderberry. Okay, well, all 3 of those plants are important, and I was at a program today at the Navy base in Port Hueneme, and you know, someone asked, what's the most difficult thing that tribal people have had to overcome, and that's like trying to ask a father who has 10 children, which one of these children is your favorite? So when I'm asked about the most important plants, I use the story of Ishi. And if you haven't read the book about Ishi, it's a wonderful, wonderful book, a wonderful story, a little tragic, like many true tribal stories. But there's a part in the book where Ishi, who had been living up in the mountains east of Sacramento all by himself because his tribe had all died and been killed, and he was the last of his tribal members. And he came down out of the mountains and was quickly brought to a museum in Berkeley, and worked with a lot of the professors at Cal Berkeley, and one being Kroeber, who was a famous anthropologist and had studied the California tribes extensively, was the leading expert on California tribal history and knowledge. And after kind of getting them settled, and after a couple of months, a group of college professors, all PhDs, all very learned, intelligent men, took Ishi back up into the mountains. They went way back, way out in the middle of nowhere, but back to where his tribal land is. And they camped out. And this is what Kroeber said himself, that from the moment they set up camp and Ishi started talking about all the plants and all the animals that used the plants, and what animals nested in these trees, and what birds nested in these other trees, which birds were in the bush and brush, and what animals were in the ponds and things like that. So he became the teacher and we became the students. And they were amazed at how many plants that he knew and would name off in his tribal language, and their uses, which ones were medicine, which ones were used for food, which ones were used for tools. And many of our plants, for example, elderberry is a very important plant. The oak trees, toyon for its hard wood. I got a piece of toyon. Don't tell anyone, that this just stays between us, which means I can care less if you tell anybody. I've been kicked out of better places than this. But I was on Santa Rosa Island and I brought home a piece of toyon. I'm going to make a walking stick / digging stick out of it. So one end will be a digging stick because toyon is very hard wood. And I know Brenda's thinking, Alan didn't mention he was going to talk about toyon. That's what I do. I'm going to talk about every plant that I didn't mention. But elderberry is one of those plants that the berries are edibles. We make our clapper sticks. on. So when we sing our songs, we use wand socks. They're a simple rhythm instrument, and this is elderberry. Keeps the rhythm of the song. The great thing about elderberry is it's a very soft wood. Those of you that grow it know about it. So it's easy to split. The center is very soft, so it's easy to hollow out. So you can make whistles and flutes from elderberry. You can make clapper sticks. We would make little carrying tubes, so cut it off about that long, hollow it out, and then put your medicine in there, your tobacco in there, and put it in your pouch, and away you go. Like I said, the berries are edible, a little tart if you eat them. My suggestion is when you see the berries ripe in early summer, gather some of those berries and mix them in with your pancakes. Oh my God, they are delicious. So there are many plants, but I mean, naturally there are some that we used a lot, the oak trees with the acorns and things like that. And there's a creation story. I like telling the story of how we got hands like lizard instead of paws like coyote. But sometimes I tell the story and I take the Rainbow Bridge story and I combine the two stories and simply put, the Reader's Digest short version is that the sky people created the Chumash people. They decided what we would look like. And as you can see, we are extremely good looking. I just wanted you to admire for a minute. If you haven't figured out, I'm a little bit full of myself. And then after the sky people had decided what the Chumash people looked like, it was Hutash, Mother Earth, who created us. And the way I've been told the story is that Hutash took seeds from a plant, and they don't say which plant it is. So you can use your imagination. There are blue dicks on the islands, so possibly it could be that. But when the plant grew, instead of flowers blooming, the Chumash people bloomed from that plant. And when I tell those two stories, I talk about at the end of the story, there's many lessons in those two stories, and I tell them as one. To me, one important lesson is that a creature as small as a little lizard, 2-3 inches long, a little baby lizard. If you look at it, it has hands with 5 fingers, just like us. And when you hear the story of how Hutash created us from a plant, to me, the lesson of that is that the Chumash people, the Tatavion people, the Tonga Gabrielino, we all believe the same thing, that we came from the land. This land is our home, and we grow and mature and blossom, and then we die. And so do all the plants. They all have a lifespan. If you ever get out to Santa Rosa Island, and if you're lucky enough, it's a long hike. If you're lucky enough to know the rangers and have connections to use their vehicles, it's about a 12-mile drive from where the campground is. Oh no, I take it back. It's maybe about 7-8 miles. But there's a small grove of oak trees, and there's one that's called the grandmother oak tree. It's 400 years old. So in Chumash, Tataviam, Tonga territory, the oak tree is probably the oldest living creature that we have. And we respect them because they don't see just 1 or 2 generations of people. They see several dozens of generations. And they see that grandfather oak tree saw when the Chumash people lived off the land and collected their acorns. And then it saw the Spanish come, and it saw the Americans come. And it saw deer and elk and horses come. And it saw the deer, the elk, and the horses go away. And now it's going back to the people again. So those are the things. I'm going to talk about the Land Conservancy more towards the end, but I want to share a story. I'm very proud to announce that at age 69, well, wait, let me turn on my chat because I'm sure someone just put in the chat, gee, you don't look that old. I don't see it. I'm a little disappointed in this group. You guys got to be a little faster. My humor is really slow and really.
I unmuted myself, but I laughed at that number.
Thank you, dear. My girlfriend and I, Mona Lewis, just published our first book. If you want to order from us, I'll put the information up in a moment. You can actually order on Amazon, and we're extremely proud. It turned out very well, and we've gotten great reviews. And it talks about some of the plants that I've talked about in the book, but it's a story of a California towhee, Tata the Tatavion towhee. Once there was a young Tatavion towhee bird. Today we call them California towhees.
Too bright. Yeah.
There you go. Can everyone see?
Not very well.
That looks good.
Okay.
Can you see it, Brenda?
Today, well, I'm just going to go on with the story.
Okay, great.
Today we call them California towhees, but Tata was hatched near the Tatavion village of Paine, near modern-day Castaic Lake in Southern California. So hence the Tatavion towhee. The towhee are small birds that hop and run from chaparral brush to chaparral brush, looking for seeds and bugs to eat. They will fly occasionally, but never very high or very far. When Tata was young, his parents taught him how to hop and run from chaparral bush to chaparral bush, and where to find the best seeds and the juiciest bugs. Tata's parents also taught him how to fly, and they told him over and over, Tata, never fly too high above the chaparral, and never fly above the trees. Why? Asked Tata. Tata's pop said there are giant killer birds, hawks, falcons, and eagles that will eat you. They are fast, strong, and have sharp, sharp talons. Now, Tata was about 5 weeks old, and like most teenagers, he thought his parents were just trying to scare him. His parents seemed to be telling the truth, but like most teenagers, he wanted to see these giant killer birds with his own eyes. So one morning, while his parents and brothers were hopping under some coyote brush, eating seeds, Tata flew to the top of the brush. He landed on top of the brush. He looked to his left, then to his right for those killer giant hawks, falcons, and eagles. He saw nothing. He flew to the top of an elderberry tree. He looked to his left, looked to his right for those killer hawks, falcons, and eagles. He saw nothing. Then he flew to the top of a giant oak tree, a grandfather oak tree. It was very large and tall. He looked to his left and looked to his right, and he didn't see any killer hawks, falcons, or eagles. Just then, Tata's friend, Juan, the sparrow, landed on the branch next to Tata. Juan asked, "What are you doing way up here, my friend?" Tata explained about the giant killer birds that his parents had told him about, and that he wanted to see them for himself. Tata said, "I looked all around, but I didn't see any giant birds." At that moment, Juan said, "Look up, my friend." And Tata the Tataviam did, and he saw a giant red-tailed hawk circling high above him. Just then, the hawk tucked his wings and dived down towards the two small birds. The two friends hopped into the center of the tree for protection. But the red-tailed hawk was not after the two little birds. The giant killer hawk just caught a rattlesnake. Tata said, "Did you see that? He caught a rattlesnake, a rattlesnake. Holy moly, my parents were telling me the truth." Juan said, "My parents told me the same thing. maybe we should listen to them more closely. The two friends looked at each other for a moment, and then they both laughed and laughed. But after seeing the giant red-tailed killer hawk, the young birds did listen just a little bit more closely to their parents, but they still continued acting like they didn't believe them. Yes, even teenage towhee birds can roll their eyes. And that's the story of Tata, the Tataviam towhee. The lesson is teenagers are teenagers. I worked in juvenile institutions. I've had more teenagers roll my eyes at me. If I had $1 for every teenager that rolled his eyes as I told them a story, I would be a rich man. But I realized I've been telling stories for 25, 30 years, Native American stories. I taught preschool in the early 70s, so I've been a storyteller most of my life. And I've realized that storytelling is very important to all people, all cultures. We all love stories. And I saw a quote somewhere from someone way more intelligent than me, and I can't remember who it was, but it was one of those really intelligent people, Socrates or someone important like that. One of the Kardashians, maybe, I don't know. And it said that everyone loves stories. Everyone loves to hear stories. And we even have our dreams every night, which are stories. So storytelling is an extremely large, important part of all tribal cultures. Let me get in a shameless plug. So if you have a pencil or a camera, get that ready and hold that up. Where's my
Are you getting ready to plug your book, Alan?
I'm gonna plug my book.
Yeah, we have the link.
There's a book. You guys have the links. The
We have the link on the Eventbrite, and we will provide the link to everyone that's in attendance tonight as well. Beautiful illustrations, Mona. Thank you. Thank you.
And if you call right now, there's a special offer for the first 100 callers. I watch way too much late night television. The other thing I want to talk about is, if I can have a moment, I mentioned the canoe gathering, and I also mentioned I was going to mention plants that I didn't mention in our meeting, but I've been involved with these canoes right here. The Chumash built ocean plank canoes. The Chumash word is to mull. And a plank canoe is very unique. There's only 2 tribes on the whole West Coast. So you can go from Baja, California up to Alaska, and you'll only find 2 tribes that make plank canoes like these. So, and the reason is, here in Southern California, we don't have cedar trees like the Northwest people do. We don't have giant redwood trees like Northern California and Oregon have. So the Chumash and Tongva, the only 2 tribes on the West Coast, so basically from Morro Bay, Santa Barbara, Ventura, Malibu, Chumash territory, and then from Santa Monica down to Long Beach, Tongva territory, and then the islands off our coast for either Tongva or Chumash. We built ocean canoes, and we didn't have the big trees to make the dugout canoes. So we came up with the technology of when driftwood would come wash ashore. So whenever there's big storms, an old tree will fall down and fall into the river, and the rivers flow to the ocean. And any of the soft woods, cottonwood, any of the pine trees, we would split off and make our own boards. And then we would drill. So basically we made our own 2x6, 2x8, 2x12, 10 feet, 12 feet, 16 feet long. And then we would drill holes in those boards and tie them together. So if you look at this canoe here, you can see the black lines. That's a board on top, then it's glued and tied to the board below it. This is a 32-foot plank Canoe. Does not have one single metal nail, one single metal screw. It is literally glued and tied together. The preferred wood was redwood. So the coastal redwood that used to drift down our coast. Any people of the ocean know that our currents go from north to south. So before we dammed up all our rivers, hundreds of rivers flowed from the mountains down to the ocean. There are a few exceptions. The Salinas River flows away from the ocean. It's one of the few. There's a river in Los Angeles County out in the desert that also flows away from the ocean. But most rivers flow to the ocean. So before we dammed them up when there was big storms in the winter, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are the plant experts, but what I've heard is that coastal redwoods live a little bit over 100 years. And then they start to die off. But then like anything, some trees, live 10, 20 years and maybe their seeds were dropped pretty close to the river and we have a really rainy year and that tree's only 15, 20 years old, but a 15, 20-year-old redwood tree is still pretty tall. And maybe the river now is wider and it washes this young tree away and it will come into the ocean. And redwood was the preferred wood. And so in modern times, we built all of our canoes with redwood, and we get most of it from Northern California.
What do you use to hold them together? You said tie them up?
Yes. Hold on one second. Well, the natural tar and asphaltum. So any of you that go for walks along the beach here in Ventura for the last year or so, it's almost impossible if you walk barefoot on the beach not to come home with some black tar on your feet. Morro Bay is the same, has a lot. Carpinteria was a main source of natural tar asphaltum, La Brea tar pits. And it's just like anything. There's some tar asphaltum that is a better quality. It's like there's higher grades of oil. So the tar on the islands on Santa Rosa was not very good. So that was a trade item that we would trade. The tar from Carpinteria was high quality. Some of that tar around Castaic, Newhall, Santa Clarita Valley, and some in the southern end of San Joaquin Valley, where all those oil fields are in Kern County, Taft, and Bakersfield. That's some good tar. And then they would mix it with pine pitch. So any of the native pine trees, that pine pitch is a natural sealer. So a lot of woodworkers would use the pine pitch just like a urethane. And sometimes they would use the pine pitch to mix their colors when they're mixing their paints from the ochres. Which, by the way, I should have mentioned, one of the things that I'm extremely proud of, and Mona's illustrations in our book are getting rave reviews. She's a wonderful artist. All the drawings were done with natural pigments. So when I was out working on monitoring jobs, I got a lot of little ochres and creeks that feed into the Santa Clara River. Some of the Santa Clara River, we went along the Ventura River. We live here in Ventura, up into the foothills around Ojai, the mountains around Ojai, and all the rocks we collected and all the charcoal we got out of our fireplace, and she made all the paints the way tribal people have made for thousands of years. And so we're very proud that the book is truly made in the tribal spirit, which is why it's called Tata the Tataviam Toi, a tribal story. And one thing I've realized this for years and years, but I've said this a lot this month. This is Native American month. And I've encouraged everybody that's listening comes from a tribal background, everyone. So Mona, and on my mom's side, I have about 12% English. So I don't even like saying the C word, but I will. I don't drink coffee. I drink tea, and I usually have Earl Grey every morning. And I'm proud of my Portuguese and English ancestry I get from my mom's side. And it's a trip that we plan on making because Mona's ancestors are English and Scottish and Vikings, and we want to go over and visit where her tribal people come from. So in November, I encourage everyone, it's important to acknowledge whose land you are and learn about your local tribes. A lot of people don't know a lot about California tribes and that we're still here and how we survived and what are our beliefs and our stories and things like that. But I say this all the time. I come from a tribal culture. I only have to go back about definitely 4 grades. But 250 years ago, my people were living a tribal life story. They were hunting and gathering and trading and had business relationships with tribes all around them. They lived a tribal life. Those of you that are English and Irish, Italians, from Asia, from Africa, you come from a tribal background. Some of your people might have lived a tribal life 400 or 500 years ago. Some might have lived a tribal life 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. But we all come from tribal cultures. So Native November is not only, I believe, a month to acknowledge the Chumash, the Tataviam, the Tonga, if you live in Southern California, the Serrano, Kirinumuk, the Selenians, but it's also a time to get in touch with your tribal roots. You know, what animals did your tribal people hunt if they're from Africa, if they're from Asia, if they're from Europe? Not all tribes in North America hunted buffalo. Our buffalo for the Chumash was abalone. We had abalone by the millions. The Plains tribes, they had buffalo by the millions. They always knew there was a source. The ocean, the fish were our buffalo. So we always knew we could go out in our canoes and we could harpoon and use nets and fishing hooks, and we can bring back a tamale full of fish. And I know this because I helped build this tamale. It's 24 feet long. These paddlers right here are actually kneeling on sandbags. And we put about 350 to 300 pounds to 350 pounds of sandbags in the 24-foot tamale to get some of it underwater so it's not tippy. Flat bottom canoes are very tippy. This is a 32-foot tamale. We put over 600 pounds of sandbags in this tamale. So that means we have 6 paddlers in that canoe. That's me in the front. And if you look real close at me, you're probably wondering, do I have permits for those guns? Yes, I do.
You got jokes today, Alan.
Mona has had to hear that joke at least 50 times in the last 6 weeks. And when I sign off, I'm going to get one of these in the back of the head, and I deserve it. But so if you take out a few paddlers, we could easily take both those canoes out and catch 300-400 pounds of fish and bring it back. Those were our buffaloes. So it's important to learn about California tribes and what plants and animals that we hunted and gathered. But what's more important is to remember that we're still here. The Tataviam are struggling to survive. We're under review by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We're trying to get federally recognized. So 500 years ago, when the Spanish were first coming here, when they came to the Los Angeles area, so the Los Angeles Basin, the San Fernando Valley, the Santa Clarita Valley. There were more villages and more tribal indigenous people in Southern California than anywhere else in the state. It's always been the most populous area. Literally, probably 100 villages at minimum, probably more than 100 villages in Los Angeles County 500 years ago. Yet, there is not one single federally recognized tribe in Los Angeles County. And the Tatavion, we are attempting to get our federal recognition. It's an extremely difficult process. We have anthropologists, lawyers, lobbyists, beggars, thieves. We have everyone working on our petition. And it takes a lot of years. We're almost through the phase one. There's one area that we have to define and clear up with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They said we don't, according to our petition, we don't look like we're a historic tribe. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they have a very limited view of tribes. And they think all tribes are like the Hopi, the Navajo, the Lakota, the Sioux, the Cheyenne. And in Southern California, we were more clan-based and more village-based. Each village was like a little sub-tribe. So we're having a little difficulty explaining that, but hopefully we'll get that worked out, which has taken us 3 years to get through phase one. And phase two takes longer, 4 to 5 years. Like I said, I'll be 70 here in 2 months. I'm just hoping that I'm alive to find out what the final decision is. But I'm going to get nothing from this. It won't benefit me. My daughter and son will hopefully benefit if we do get fairly recognized, and my grandson will benefit from it greatly. So we also have our Tatavion Land Conservancy that we just started a couple years ago. And our Tatavion Land Conservancy is basically the same as the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy, the Sierra Club. It's just our Tatavion Land Conservancy. What I recommend is, and if Brenda or Aaron or Scott or someone will type this in maybe at the chat, Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. So if anyone Googles Fernandeño, Fernandeno, Tataviam, Tataviam, Band of Mission Indians. Our website will come up. On the website, there will be there will be the Tatavion Land Conservancy. That's the best way to get to our Land Conservancy. And our goal is to acquire our traditional territorial land back. Naturally, we can't get all of it, but we want to get some land and keep as open space and nature preserves where we can revitalize the native plants, have hiking trails for everyone, for the public to come and walk Tatavion land the way my ancestors walked and gathered on that land. But by us owning the land, it will allow us also to do ceremony. So when I want to go do ceremony, I have to ask for permission. If I want to go to Burro Flats, one of the most sacred sites for those three tribes, it's in the Santa Susana Field Lab, owned by Boeing, I have to get permission and be escorted. If I want to go up to Mount Pinos and organize a summer solstice ceremony, which I've done for the last 25 years, I have to get permission from Los Padres National Forest. So having our own land conservancy is extremely important. We just acquired our first 2 parcels of land. They were donated by 2 developers. They're both in the Castaic area. We literally have no money. I think we have a couple $100 left in our checking account. So now that we have we have about 100 acres, of both about 50-acre little parcels. And they're just natural in their natural setting with some oak trees, and there are some invasive. So we have to do three things. First, we have to get insurance now because we have land, so we have to have insurance. So we need donations for insurance. Then we have to hire a botanist. Maybe we'll get someone from Theodore, Paine, but we need someone to go out and walk the two parcels of land to identify any endangered plants. So we'll make sure that if there's any endangered plants like the San Fernando Valley Spineflower, something like that, then it's going to be more work and things that we'll have to do. Then we have to hire a biologist to go out and do the same thing for the animals to see if there's any red-legged frogs or any endangered species out that we would have to make sure that are protected before we put in any trails or things like that. But when I say if someone goes there and hits the donate button, it just leaves a couple dollars, $5, $10. It's all important. We need $5,000–6,000 to kind of get up and running, and then we'll go hit up the big boys like Disney and Newhall Farm and Ranch and those guys and the big developers. But our hope is that within the next year or two, we'll have some ribbon cuttings and the general public will come out to Tatavion land. And I'll be able to show people coast live oak and coyote brush and elderberry and white sage and hummingbird sage. And I told you, Brenda, I'm going to name a whole bunch of plants that I told you I was going to mention. Hummingbird sage is a
We have all the
wonderful
sages.
plant.
We're good, Alan. We're good.
I have hummingbird sage in my little planter over there, and the little birds love it. The butterflies and naturally the hummingbirds, but a lot of little birds love the hummingbird sage. It makes a delicious tea. It's good for arthritis, and it makes you smarter. Okay, I've talked way too long. I'm going to open it up for
What's the Tatavian word for Pinocchio?
Yeah, my nose would have hit the screen by now.
Okay. Well, Alan, thank you so much for the illustrations and the books. We're really excited to have that featured. My takeaway from that story was, to listen to the elders because they have knowledge. What happens to the culture as a whole when an elder is lost?
Well, like all of us, I encourage everyone, I encourage all young people, but even all of us, to sit down with the oldest family member in your family, and don't be afraid to pull out a recorder or hit record on your iPhone or to take notes. I wish I would have taken notes or recorded my grandmother. She was a wealth of knowledge. But I'm thankful that I know a lot of very knowledgeable anthropologists. But the reason I have to go to anthropologists and ask them about my culture and how did they do this and what did they do here and how and why is because there was a gap of about 5 generations of elders that weren't allowed to pass on their knowledge. So I know about that much, and I'm going to pass it on doing this sort of stuff as much as I can. I recorded a story for my tribe in the educational department just last week, and they're constantly interviewing our elders council.
We're losing you on sound a little bit, Alan.
Okay, you're probably better off.
No, your stories are wonderful. My favorite stories are coyote stories. Do you have one?
Oh,
A happy one. A happy coyote story.
I always have coyote stories. I I always, I was telling you about the creation story and how the Sky people created the Chumash people. Well, they at least decided what we would look like. And the Sky people are Sky Coyote, Sky Lizard, Sky Snake, Sky Eagle, the great golden eagle, the sun, the moon, and morning star. And it was those Sky people that got together to decide what the Chumash people would look like. Sky Coyote, he wanted us to look like him. He wanted us to have furry ears, a long pointy nose with a little black tip at the end. I don't know if you can see that coyote, but he has yellow eyes. Coyote wanted the Chumash people to have yellow eyes.
That's a good
Probably wanted
looking
us to have a
coyote.
tail. What's that?
That's a good looking coyote.
That is. He's a healthy one. I think they're beautiful animals. But Sky Eagle, he talked him out of all those things. And after several days and several nights, they pretty much decided this is what we would look like. And hold on. They had one final thing to discuss, and that was hams. And Coyote jumped up and he held his paws up. He said the Chumash people should have paws as hands. Well, they were so tired of arguing with Coyote. They said, okay, look, we're gonna let you have that one thing. The Chumash people will have paws as hands. And since that's the last thing, we want you to put your paw print in the sacred stone. In the upper world, there's a special stone. It's a perfect circle, perfectly smooth and flat. They told Coyote, put your paw print in that stone. But what's special and unique about the stone is if you put a paw print in that stone, it will stay there forever and never go away. And they told Coyote, once you put that paw print there, it'll be there forever. Forever, the Chumash people will have paws as hands. Well, Coyote was bringing his paw down very slowly. He's savoring the moment as the other Sky people were gathered around. And just before he was about to put that paw print in that stone, he forgot about Sky Lizard. Sat quietly and said a single word. And just before Coyote was about to put that handprint, the lizard ran between Coyote's legs and ran and put his handprint in that stone. When the other Sky people came and looked at the handprint of the lizard, they liked that much better. And the Chumash people say that's how we got hands like lizard instead of paws like Coyote. Mm-hmm. This is my asphaltum. So this is a basket that was weaved by a dear friend of mine. So under this is juncus, another plant I didn't mention to you, Brenda. You don't have juncus there?
We have juncus.
The textile, what is it? What was the scientific name?
Textilis?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what's underneath it. And then it's covered with the natural asphaltum and pine pitch. If you notice on the back, it's a little more shiny. That's the pine pitch. And the combination of pine pitch and asphaltum tar is called yoke. Y-O-P, yoke is what we glued our canoes together. We also seal up baskets with it so we could cook in them and they would be watertight. Any more questions? We have a few minutes.
Oh, we have, we're going to open up the Q&A in a little bit. One last question from the panel, I think, is how does habitat destruction affect Chumash culture, and how will the restoration affect current culture?
Yeah, you can definitely say there's a parallel. The native population dropped tremendously when the Spanish first came and the missions came. Our population was cut in half. And then when California became a state and it had the bounty system, our population dropped 90%. Many tribes were extinct and most tribes were almost close to extinction. And I say this, I realized this just this year, which is a good lesson for everyone. Like I said, I'm 69 years old and I'm still learning. And I realized when I talk about this topic that California has had 4 colonizations. So however many thousands of years ago, 20,000 years ago, California was under ice. Most of continental America was under ice. And then around 15,000 years ago, the ice started to melt. And the first to colonize California were the animals, the bugs, the insects, and the plants. It was a peaceful colonization. They pretty much lived in harmony. Even the animals that hunted some of the other animals, it was still a very harmonious colonization. And I think the animals realized how important each was to each other. The second colonization was by tribal people, my ancestors. The Chumash have been here over 13,000 years. When I said I was on Santa Rosa Island, some of our oldest village sites in all of North America are on Santa Rosa Island. Last year, I was actually digging through a midden, which is a shell midden is a pile of shells that were eaten by Chumash people and left. And we dug down, and eventually we got down to shell midden that they did carbon dating testing on. That was over 11,000 years old. So the second colonization was by tribal people. It was a little bit more invasive. We got rid of many of the, not many, but we got rid of some of the larger animals. The woolly mammoths went extinct. And we probably killed the last few. Pygmy woolly mammoths on the Channel Islands went extinct 13,000 years ago. The Arlington Spring man, which is the leg bone of a Chumash man that was found in 1959, was carbon dated test to be between 13,000 to 13,500 years old, which means the Arlington Spring man was probably there to see the last few woolly mammoths die, and they probably killed them and ate them. So it wasn't as peaceful colonization as the animals, but it was fairly peaceful. The native peoples realized that even the animals we hunted, we respected, and we made sure that when we gather acorns from those oak trees, we never gathered the first ones. So the first acorns that drop in summer, we usually didn't collect those. We let the animals get those. The deer that we're going to hunt, the rabbits that we're going to hunt, but even the blue jays and the woodpeckers that we didn't hunt, that we just admired for their beauty, that we knew they were important, that they're part of that that circle of that food chain. You know, the bugs are important because the birds eat the bugs. You know, the bigger birds eat the smaller birds, and so on and so on. We all need each other. The second colonization was still pretty peaceful because we realized the importance of being respectful to the plants and the animals. The third colonization was by the Spanish and Mexican people and governments, and it was much more invasive, much more hostile, and much more destructive. And the fourth was even more destructive, and that was by the American government, the mass destruction of plants and animals. The Spanish say when they came down the coast of California that there were many areas that they couldn't see the ground because there were so many oak trees. The trees grew together enough that the top of the trees made an umbrella, and there would be miles and miles and miles, hundreds of square miles of solid oak trees that they couldn't even see the ground. Couldn't see if there were smaller bushes, if there were animals underneath those trees. The oak trees have been removed to build highways, towns, make furniture. And as we know, to get an oak tree just to be fairly mature, what is it, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years maybe? So the oak trees that I hope to start planting in the next year or two, Sky Valley is a wonderful organization. If I can help revitalize some of the oak trees, and then when you talk about invasives like arundo, along the Santa Clara River, it's just overtaken everything. So there's certain invasive plants, mustard and things that make it difficult for the native plants. So when you take the plants that have been killed and removed, chopped down, removed so we can have agriculture, we have millions of acres of agriculture in California. All that land that we grow things on used to have native plants.
Thank you, Alan. We're right on schedule. Wow, yay us. We'll open it up to questions. Anybody that has a question, drop it in the chat, and Alan will answer. And if Mona is around, maybe someone has questions for Mona about her beautiful artwork, if she doesn't mind answering a few. We'd love to include her. We have one question for you, Alan, so far. Is there a desire for tribal lands along the San Gabriels between Tujunga and Altadena, or in the Verdugos or the San Rafael Hills?
Is there a desire to acquire land?
Yes, that's the question.
Yes, we've actually, for a fairly non-recognized tribe, we're extremely organized, and we've been working with developers and various government agencies. So we've gotten letters of support from many cities at LA County. We've actually been working for years with not much success with Department of Water and Power to acquire the Chatsworth Nature Preserve. That used to be a reservoir. It is now just a nature preserve. But we would, there's no particular lands that I'm aware of other than that. And right now we're focusing mostly on the Santa Clarita Valley and those areas right there, because there's just a lot of proposed developments right now.
I have a question. What does it feel like to have to provide documentation that you exist, that you existed, that your culture was here for thousands of years? What does that feel like?
You know, it can be frustrating. I've been told by people that they're amazed at how patient I can be when I'm asked the same question over and over and over. So how much Native ancestry do you have? And lots of times I'll just answer the question, but after about being asked the 184th time, I'll snap and say, you know, that's just a disrespectful, rude question to ask. You know, we don't ask Barack Obama what percentage of African American he is. We don't ask any other ethnic group that question.
We're losing you a little on the sound, Alan.
And it's to me, I say this all the time. If anyone looks at me, I'm going to have a hard time convincing you that I'm English. But why ask me, how are you full-blooded? I was raised Native, and that's what I identify as. My father was a Marine, fought in World War II, and he was adamant that on all of our birth certificates, and the term back in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, when me and my brothers and sisters were born, was Indian. And on my birth certificate, that's what it says. But for the most part, I think at least my generation, the younger generation is a little bit more, maybe a little bit more militant and be a little bit more aggressive or angry in their responses. But I just have the attitude that many people of color in America have. This was the hand I was dealt. and I'm not going to sit and waste a bunch of time over the hand that I was dealt. I'm just going to try and enjoy my life as much as I can, and accomplish as much as I can, do as much as I can for my tribe. And that's kind of my outlook on it.
A question from the chat coming from Lumi Islanders. What are your plans for joining the Pacific Northwest canoe paddling gatherings? You got guns, Alan. What you gonna do with those guns?
That's a dear friend of mine.
I hear Mona. I hear Mona in the background.
Yeah. Like I said, I was up in Lumi territory last summer, so I believe that's my dear friend Donna, and I told her and her mom about this, and it's them or one of my Lumi tribal friends, but I'm pretty sure that's Donna and her mom, two wonderful people who invited me when I was up there out to their island home, a beautiful home on Lumi Island. But on September 8th, 2001, we made our first crossing in that first canoe I showed you, this one, to Santa Cruz Island. It was the first time in over 150 years a Tamal had made the crossing from the mainland to any of the islands. So we didn't go in 2019 because it was very windy. We didn't go this year because of the pandemic. So we have to go next year. This is the first year in 22 years I have not been on the water in a traditional canoe. And man, it is killing me. And to show you how important it is to me, when the pandemic started, I weighed 212 pounds. And I've realized for the last several years, I only have a few years of serious paddling left. So I took the opportunity to stop going to Duke's and eating burgers and chicken burritos, and started eating healthy. And I've dropped 25 pounds, but I'm still just as strong. I'm doing the same amount of weight training today as I was 6-7 months ago. So I'm actually stronger now. So it's extremely important for us on the 20th anniversary of the first crossing in historic times that we make that crossing again. And I'm hoping that next summer, the Northwest people, they didn't have their canoe gathering this year either. And I want to get up and paddle with my Northwest tribal people. And that's my goal. On my 70th year, knock on wood, that I get to paddle in my traditional Chumash canoe, and that either we take one of our canoes up there, or we go up there and paddle with the Northwest people in their canoes, and we'll have a Chumash canoe with the Chumash people paddling with our Northwest people. And if I have one of those bucket lists to check off before I end my paddling career, which I think I have another at least a couple more years left in these old bones, we want to have canoe gatherings where we have Lumi Islander come here with us and see canoes from all tribal canoes from all around the world, from the islands, Hawaii, from Maori, from the Northwest, come to Chumash territory and paddle with us. It's always been a dream.
We had someone asked a question about Chumash and learning how to speak it. Do you speak Chumash?
I know a handful of words. There are the San Ynez Chumash, who are the only federally recognized Chumash tribe. They have revitalized their language. They have several speakers, and they have a dictionary. So I don't know if it's available to the public, but if you wanted to learn some Chumash words, if you go to the Sandy Inez Chumash, it's a little pricey. I know it's about $150, $160. But that's probably the best way. But some of the other dialects, the local Chumash here in the Ventura area, Julie Tuamite's group, a young man named Matthew Basudu, who's Northern Chumash, and Barbareño, Ventureño Chumash, has been working on revitalizing the Ventureño and Barbareño dialects. So I think shortly there'll be some dictionaries of those. The Tataviam language is almost lost. I'm on our language committee. I'm on too many committees.
Can you tell us a little bit about the school that the tribal council has?
The Fernandeño Tataviam, we have an education department. So we do programs for all of our youth. It's just for our tribal youth. But we hope to start expanding in the next couple of years. Federal recognition will go a big way in that, and do more things for the public youth. For anyone, if you are interested, and these programs are struggling also, but the Los Angeles Unified School District has an Indian education department, and Ventura County, if you live in Ventura County, we have Ventura Indian Education Consortium. It's a group of about 10 school districts. And we used to reach out to over 1,000 Native students, and the funds have been cut back so much, and so many restrictions put on us in the last 4 years that we're barely surviving. But there are some school districts, so ask your school district if they have an Indian education department, and that's for all for Native students. But they all the information they have, they share with all the teachers.
Another question we had was, what's the best way to teach children about the history of the land here?
I've been pitching. I think one of the best resources where I live in Ventura County is the Oak Brook Chumash Museum, because the board of directors has Chumash people on it. So my aunt is on the board of directors. I'm fairly actively involved with that museum, and it's more Native run. I encourage all of you, even though they don't need the money. Sandy Inez, like I said, is a very wealthy tribe. They have their casino and they're very wealthy, but still they're doing something in about, I think in the next 12 months, they will open their cultural center in Sandy Inez. And I encourage everyone, it's a beautiful drive. It's a beautiful area. Go up to Sandy Inez when their cultural center opens, because what that does is it's going to set a precedent that that will be a museum and cultural center owned and run by Chumash people. And they've been out getting their collection. So what I hear through the Chumash grapevine is they're going to have a beautiful museum with just some incredible artifacts and baskets, Chumash baskets, which are some of the most beautiful baskets you will find anywhere in the world. So support the museums that work within the tribal community. UCLA's museum works with the Tongva Gabrielino and the Tatavion people. But hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, it's one of our goals that somewhere in Los Angeles County, probably the Santa Clarita area, we will open a Fernandeño Tataviam Cultural Center in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm knocking on a lot of wood here.
Another question we had is, what can we, the public, do to support your quest for federal recognition?
This doesn't cost you anything. as we know, we just went through this a little bit over a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Politicians respond to pressure. When they hear from their constituency, when they hear from people that vote them in or vote them out, they listen. So I encourage all of you. I believe our petition number, and you can go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I apologize, I should have known this in advance, but I can tell you right now, it's one of two numbers. You can go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs website and then look for federal recognition. They actually have a whole department. It's called OFA, Office of Federal Acknowledgement. And all the OFA, Office of Federal Acknowledgement, does within the Bureau of Indian Affairs is review petitions. We are under review right now, so we're at the top of that list. There's several hundred tribes that are on the list that want to be federally recognized. Our petition number, I believe, is number 158. If it's not 158, it might just be 58. And then you can send in a letter of support, an email saying you support the Fernandeño Tatavion. But political pressure is the best. If the local Congress people, your representative in Los Angeles County, the 2 or 3 representatives, Representative Bass and the various representatives, our senators, we're going to have a new senator replacing Kamala Harris. It doesn't cost any money to send them an email saying, we support the approval of petition 58 or 158 for the Fernandeño Tataviam band. That we know they've been here for thousands of years, and they are a tribe, and the Tataviam people are still here. The Fernandeño Tataviam people are still here, and that we should be recognized. And I go to a private school in Northridge, a Highland Hall. It's a Waldorf school. It's where I met Mona, and literally their high school students, their staff, their teachers are all sending up emails to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Their board has sent off a letter of support, and then they're writing letters to their Congress people, their senators and congressmen. Who knows? Maybe a few hundred letters to Joe Biden might be what puts us over the hump. It's a strange process. Everything helps.
It's a long process, that's for sure.
Yes.
We had a couple questions for Mona, if she's willing to answer.
Sure, Mona.
What does she use for her dyes? And I think there was a specific mushroom question, if you use mushrooms.
I'm not a big mushroom dyer because we don't have a lot of mushrooms that grow right here. But I use all kinds of plants for dyes. I do use California plants, lots of sagebrush and black walnut and eucalyptus. That's not indigenous, but it makes amazing orange dyes. And all the colors I used for the book are from rocks. And this is my palette that I made.
Oh, I see the abalone shell.
Yeah, that's where I mix the colors.
That is gorgeous.
This one came from the Lumi area, actually. But all the rest are rocks that came from right into Tataviam territory. So we just collect those and grind them up with a mortar and pestle and mix a little tree sap in there and water and honey, and there we go. Anything else?
I think
I have a question for the two of you. How did you guys select this story for the book?
In my research, the Tataviam language is almost lost, and we're having difficulty revitalizing it. But most of our stories, there's only a handful of traditional Tataviam stories, whereas the Shumash, anyone can go buy December's Child, which probably has over 100 Shumash stories in it. So I realized there was a need to try and revitalize Tataviam stories. And what I've tried to do, and we already have a couple more stories that we're going to start working on our next 2 books here. As soon as we're through with this, we'll start on them. But they're original stories of mine, and I try as much as possible to keep them in the spirit of Tataviam beliefs and Tataviam culture. So the next book will be a creation story, and it will tell how the animals, bear, mountain lion, eagle, even tortoise and spider and coyote, small creatures, raven, how they got together and had a great council to decide what the Tataviam people would look like. And then the story goes on from there. So how animals are used within many tribal cultures, but then I focused on the animals that are important to Tataviam people. So that's our stories.
Thank you, Alan. I don't know if you heard the news, but Barbara Drake passed away. Did you ever work with Barbara?
No, but I had the honor of meeting Barbara and going to several meetings. She was just a wonderful tribal leader, and it's something that I stress all the time, that the 3 tribes that I've been mentioning, this isn't something that we've just started doing recently. So unlike the US government, we didn't just start in the last 50, 60 years acknowledging that women are great leaders. We've been doing it for thousands of years. And Barbara, I had the honor of going to lots of meetings in Southern California, LA County Board of Supervisor meetings, the Native American Commission that my cousin Rudy Ortega is on. Had the honor and pleasure of doing things with Cindy Alvitri's group and at the Aquarium of the Pacific, where they recognize people of the ocean. And Barbara was just one of those women leaders that within the California tribal cultures we've known and respected for thousands of years. She will be dearly missed. So
yes, the spring gathering will not be the same without her at Haramokna. In that spirit, we invite you all next month when we have an amazing California naturalist and birder, Day Scott. You know Day, Alan, right?
yes.
Yeah, because we all know each other. So Alan, I'm sorry, Dave will be on talking about California plants and California birds. Any last question? Any last comments, Alan, for us to close with?
We'll close with a thought that I shared last night, and I met with a group of two groups of young people yesterday via Zoom, and I've always felt that tribal knowledge is something that I think the general population should be incorporating in their daily life. And I can go online right now and I can Google any of those animals that I mentioned in my creation story, and I can read about them. And I had someone ask me about the towhee last night, and everything that I know about the towhee is from observation when I've been out in nature, when I've been working on archaeological sites and along the river and streams and brush, and I would watch that little small bird, and I was fascinated by it. And I tell people, I'm like a typical Native man. When I was younger, I wanted to identify with the big, strong animals: bear, eagle, hawk, horse. My people are horse people. My grandfather was a great horseman. My brother is a great horseman. My father rode. I learned to ride as a young boy. And I thought of big animals. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, no, it's the small creature. And in order to learn about the small creatures, I think the best way is to go out in nature and just observe them. Take time to sit underneath the tree and watch the little lizards, you know, climb up and down the tree, and the snake goes slithering by, and the small little birds and the hummingbirds and the little finches and the wrens that have beautiful songs. And realizing the importance of all these teachers, it gave me a moment to reflect on me. Who am I, and how do I want to be identified? And I used to, you know, tell people that coyote and hawk are my teachers. I'm a storyteller, so coyotes are clever and mischievous, and hawk is big and strong and powerful. But when the pandemic hit and I had time to think about life a little bit, like probably many of us did, and what am I? What's important to me? And I realized that one of the most important things to me is running. I've always loved to run. I always loved to race. So at the age of 69, and it took me a while to research, because like I said, the Tatavion language is pretty well lost. So I had to borrow some Serrano words, which is from the same dialect as Tataviam. And I realized if someone asked me, say one thing about you, I would say, Puchuk Yayak. And they would go, what is Puchuk Yayak? That is fast runner. That's what I am. And I love the race. Now, did I run a lot of track when I was in high school? A little bit. Did I run it when I was in college? No. Was I good enough to run on the college track team? Yes, I was. But I got married very young and was working, and I put myself through 2 years of college, and then I started working full time, juvenile probation, teaching preschool. And I don't look back that I missed out, but I realized my love is to run and to race. And next year when I turn 70, I'm going to race again. I don't care who it is.
I'll
I'm
race
going to
you.
win somebody. I'm not stupid. I'm probably going to race a 90-year-old woman that has crutches, but I'm going to win. And then I'll get a little bit full of myself, and I'll race some 13-year-old girl, and she's going to smoke me and beat me by 20 yards in a 100-yard dash. But I will still run because it's what I love to do. And that's what I told the young people. If you are blessed to do what you love for a living, you have it made. But it still doesn't mean you give up on your dream. You can still be a musician and not be a paid musician. You can still love music and be an engineer. Learn what your gifts are and what your dreams and hopes are. And at 70, like I said, I will race again. And it's taken a lot of work. I've dropped 25 pounds. I have arthritic knees, arthritic ankles. I have that plantar fasciitis, whatever it is, but yes, I have a lot of pain in my feet, but they're getting better. And I'm going to get better, and I'm going to race when I'm 70. I'll close with that.
From your mouth to God's ears, Alan. Thank you. Thank you so much for leading us out with inspiration. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Scott doing all the background work, to Aaron for opening, Flora for the amazing plant info, Evan for running chat. Thank you all for joining us. See you next month as we get ready for the Christmas bird count with Day Scott. Thank you all.
Bye. Bye, Donna, Robin. Bye. That's my Lumi Island friends. Have a blessed night, everybody.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
You.
Iwanan.